Hey everyone, COE33 here with another game room tour for you, and this is going to be an updated game room tour because yesterday I was busy working up here and making changes, cleaning, arranging, organizing, etc. And some pretty big changes were made to this upstairs game room space, in particular this little corner over here. If you follow our channel and you've seen our different game room tours, you'll notice some pretty big changes right over here. And I thought this would be a good opportunity to do a little tour because it's been a little while. And I hope you guys enjoy this. So we're just going to take our time. We're going to go around. We're going to take a look at all the stuff in this room upstairs. And it should be a nice long video for you. Now before we get into it, I went ahead and I took some B-roll footage. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now. And then we'll come back and take a tour. Alright, we're back, and I hope you enjoyed that footage, so why don't we go ahead and get started with the tour, and what better place to do that than right here with this alcove. Now this alcove was the first thing I did to this upstairs game room when I bought this house and I moved in. I knew I wanted to make this upstairs space a game room, and this is where I started, right here. And I went and I got an arcade. I got it on clearance, I think at Toys R Us. And I picked it up, and I had an iPad 2 already, so went ahead and put that right there, and it's been living there ever since. And I tell you, this thing gets a lot of use. This is a great way to play some old school arcade games. It works great. It's a lot of fun. It's quick and easy to sit down, you hang out, and you play some games. And this is why it's been there all these years, because it gets used. And that's awesome. I really enjoy it. And it's nice not having it plugged in because it runs off an iPad. And then this is a Bluetooth controller, basically, that uses batteries. So there's no plugs right here, so it works really well for this alcove. And I love it. It's definitely one of my favorite items in the game room. I do have a little Bluetooth speaker right there, and I can crank that up and it sounds great, and it's a lot of fun to play a little Rampage or Pac-Man or whatever. And then also in this alcove we have a runt dispenser, a slot machine bank, a Rubik's Cube, and one of my favorite items up here is this little light switch that I got from thinkgeek.com. It's a power-up light switch, and basically you can turn the light on and off. So underneath here is basically just a standard light switch, and this is like a cover that goes over it. And then it makes sound effects, and it controls this light above the alcove here, which I put a blue light bulb in just to kind of give a little, you know, pop of color here, I guess. And yeah, it's pretty cool. We got this classic arcade sign here that I printed out and painted that frame and put right there. Lots of little DIY projects up here. Leaf and I both enjoy doing that. And then there's this clock right here. And yeah, that's the first thing we did to this game room many years ago. And pretty cool. So moving over here, we've got the 1978 Bally Fireball pinball machine. And definitely one of my favorite items in the collection. Leaf and I picked this up dirt cheap, drove to Portland. It had been totally neglected. It had graffiti all over it. It didn't work. It had been left out in the rain. It was just a big old mess, and that's why we got it so cheap. So we brought it home and we did a soft restore on it. We basically cleaned off the graffiti. We waxed the playfield. We replaced all the rubber components, and I had to do some light soldering to the board to get it to work because it did not work. And now it works like a champ, and definitely a lot of fun. Come up here and play a little old school pinball. Oh, I'm just noticing that my LED lights are not working. The batteries must have died. I went ahead and installed a LED light strip around the playfield, and it runs off batteries, and the battery compartment is underneath the playfield, so I'm gonna have to switch those out, I guess, because it was on a second ago. But very cool, and definitely one of my favorite pieces, as I said. A lot of fun to play some old school pinball. Now, this pinball machine was actually sold through Sears in 1978, Sears catalog, and this was a home pinball machine. It does not have a coin door or anything like that. So you could buy this for $700 out of the Sears catalog, bring it home, and have a pinball machine in your house, which I think is really cool. I actually have a printout of the old ad right there. And this is kind of some of the advertisements that Sears put out for this pinball machine back in the day. So I thought that was kind of just a fun thing to have in the game room if people were interested in getting some information on the pinball machine. And then underneath there I have my record collection, and I'm kind of starting to run out of room for records because I've got those, and then I also have my records over here. And I may come up with a different solution for my record collection at some point, but for now they're living under the pinball machine. And I definitely like to come up here, hang out, listen to some records. And speaking of which, this is my hi-fi setup. Now, if you follow the channel for a few years, you know this has gone through a lot of changes. When I did my first game room tour, I think 3-4 years ago, something like that, it was much different. I just had this kind of, you know, those cheap generic record players that you get at Target or whatever. It was like a Crosley record player, and the sound on that was awful, so I always knew I wanted to kind of upgrade it. And the nice thing about going game hunting is you go to Goodwills and thrift shops and stuff, you can kind of piece together a nice little hi-fi setup for really cheap, and that's what I did. So I found these Bose speakers. I forget how much they were, but they were probably like $10 or something like that, and they're from the 80s, and they sound amazing. And then I got this Technics turntable. I think that was $20, and that's from the 80s, and that works really well. And then I got a Scott receiver and a Denon CD player, and I kind of just pieced together this hi-fi setup, and I love it. Hanging out up here in the game room, listening to some records, chilling out is definitely one of my favorite things to do. And I have that lighting, kind of little light show going on too, as you can see there. And it's very kind of 1970s disco almost. But just a fun little spot to hang out and listen to music, and it sounds great. Moving up to our wall video games, this is the bulk of the collection. Why don't we go over here and I'll show you the changes I made. Now along this wall right here, I did have all my PlayStation 2 games, and I went ahead and moved those over to the PlayStation shelf. And yeah, I just, you know, I kind of wanted a little continuity there. The PlayStation 2 games were kind of on their own, and I have this PlayStation shelf over here, so it just kind of made sense to put them with the PlayStation 3 games. And they didn't quite all fit. I do have a little overflow in our cabinet over by where I keep the Dreamcast and all that stuff. But all the good stuff is right here on the shelf, and I definitely do love me some PlayStation 2. Now, if you want to see like a detailed collection video, this is not the video for you, but if you go to our YouTube homepage, I do have a playlist that has all our collection videos in it. And we have PlayStation 2 collection videos, and NES, and Sega, Genesis, and all that. So those are the videos where I go through and I share the entire collection with you. This is more of just an overview. So yeah, we have our PlayStation 2 games there. We have our PlayStation 3 games here. Our little PlayStation shelf. And of course we have, or not shelf, but sign, excuse me. And we have 3 different signs. We have the PlayStation sign, we have our Sega sign, and of course our Nintendo sign. And we're starting to run out of room on these shelves, so I think what I'm going to have to do is move vertically, go up here, and we have this strip along the wall where I could put some shelving and fit quite a few video games. So when I truly run out of room here, I'm going to go ahead and start installing some shelves up here and just continue to grow the collection, because this wall really is the best spot I have in the house to store the bulk of the game collection. For the most part, I like kind of the retro stuff up here, the cartridge-based games. I know I do have the PlayStation shelf there. And the reason the PlayStation 1 games are not up here is because I have the PlayStation 1 hooked up to our CRT television in the downstairs game room. And I wanted the PlayStation 1 games to be kind of by the PlayStation. So if I wanted to play a little PlayStation, I just grab the game and I can play. So yeah, I don't know, I may come up with a different solution for that eventually, but for now this is how it is. So we've got our Super Nintendo collection here. It's a small collection, but it has grown over the years, and we've got some good stuff here. You know, we've got the Marios and the Donkey Kongs, and We got a Super Game Boy in the box there that Leaf and I found at a garage sale, one of our better finds. I believe that was our On the Hunt episode, Super SNES score, and we found a whole box of Super Nintendo games and a Super Nintendo, and a bunch of the games were in the box, and some really good stuff, and we got a great deal on that, so that was a lot of fun. And over here we have our NES shelf, definitely one of my pride and joys of the collection. The NES is the first system I had growing up, and I'm sure you guys have heard the story a million times, but I was really enamored with those commercials as a kid. I was at the right age when the Nintendo launched, and I really wanted one. And basically my dad said if I wanted one I had to buy it. So I saved up change for a year, and after about a year of saving I had almost enough, and it happened to be my birthday, so we went to Toys R Us, and my dad went ahead and chipped in the extra and got me a couple games too. And I had an NES, so I had Super Mario Brother Duck Hunt Combo Kart and Top Gun and Kung Fu, and those were the games I had, and basically I had those for years. That's all I had, and I played those to death. I mean, I loved playing those games. Super Mario was definitely at the top of the list for me, and even to this day, the original Super Mario Brothers for the NES is one of my favorite games. Definitely love to play it. And I just added this right here. We picked up, Leaf and I were out and about running some errands, and we were at Walmart, and I saw for the first time a NES Classic Edition at our local Walmart, and it was the only one there. So I went ahead and finally, after, I think it's been out for almost a year, and I went ahead and bought one. And I love it. It's really cool. I was playing with it the other day, and it looks pretty cool up here. It actually fits the shelf really well, so I quite like that. I've got the controller, I've got this little figure here, the Nintendo sign, and a little classic mini. And I have these little dividers here, these little alphabet dividers that I printed out on 4x6 glossy photo paper, cut them to size, and just a great way to keep the collection organized. And then some of the box NES games are over here on the floating shelf, and there's room to grow there. Moving over here to the Sega shelf. Now I made some big changes to this yesterday. This used to be the shelf where all the Sega Genesis games were at, and I ran out of room. So I had to come up with a different solution, which I'll share with you in a second. Now I do have some overflow Genesis games on the shelf still, but it is now just kind of a generic Sega shelf. It's not just Genesis. So I can put the Master System collection there, I can put the Sega CD and Sega Saturn games, some of our overflow Dreamcast, and that kind of frees up some shelf space, so I really like that, and very happy with that. It's nice to actually have a spot for the Master System games where I can display them, because I do enjoy collecting Master System, basically anything Sega. I'm a bit of a Sega fanboy, so if it's a Sega game, I enjoy collecting it, and no matter what system it is. And we have our little display here. We got our Genesis controller, we got Tails, Sonic Mania cart with a little golden ring, so that's pretty cool. And of course the PlayStation shelf. And then our big box PC collection, and up here is our World of Warcraft collection, and definitely love World of Warcraft. I used to play that constantly. I put, I don't know, thousands of hours into it probably back in the day. And yeah, I do love some big box PC. Now we're pretty much done collecting big box PC. There's only a couple games that I really want to add, but the reality of it is there's nowhere to put it. We're out of room, and there's nowhere in the house where I can store more big box PC games. So as much as I enjoy collecting big box PC, this is more or less going to be it. I would like to find Castle of Dr. Brain. I used to have that back in the day as a kid, and I really enjoy that game, so it'd be nice to find that in the box. And yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I've got all the games I really love: Myst and Command and Conquer and the King's Quest games and Police Quest and Seventh Guest and all that. So really happy with this collection. And of course this storage shelf here is full of PC games, so you can see I'm totally out of room here. So pretty awesome to have all these games, and definitely one of the highlights up here of the collection. And of course Seventh Guest, one of my favorite. Leaf and I played that over our last Spooktacular. We played all the way through that game, and that was quite the challenge. And then our small Nintendo 64 collection here. And although it's a small collection, we've got some good titles: Donkey Kong and Banjo and Kazooie and GoldenEye and 1080 snowboarding and Wave Race and Earthworm Jim, lots of great stuff there. And I've dedicated this little wall right here to N64, so as the collection grows, we can go vertical, we can go up. So plenty of room to grow. I'm sure we could fit a complete set. That's not really a goal for the channel, but who knows? You know, over time, collections have a tendency to grow, and luckily we have lots of room to grow. So over here is our Dreamcast collection, and this is definitely one of my pride and joys. I got this Dreamcast, or I got my Dreamcast 99.99 when it launched, and that was the first time you could have like arcade quality graphics at home. And boy was I hyped for that. And these are all my original games from back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And unfortunately, as a teenager, I took all the manuals and all the cases and all that and trashed those and put all the games in a binder. But luckily, I have all my original games, and I was able to make this little wall display with them, which I quite like. And we got some great games like Shenmue and Power Stone and Skies of Arcadia and, you know, all the good stuff on the Dreamcast. We got most of the games that I would like to collect, and really happy with this collection. So glad to have all these original games. And of course we have our Dreamcast sign up there. And then we have an art print here above the staircase. And let's see, why don't we move over to this area? Now this is the big change. If you followed our game room tours, you're going to notice some pretty big changes here. So along that wall where the window's at, that used to have a couch, and Kirby, our cat, totally destroyed that couch. It was just a mess. It was all torn up. I had to come up with a solution to fill that space. And I was thinking about what would be something that's really comfortable, that would look kind of retro, that would fit the space up here. And I was thinking, well, those Papasan chairs are pretty awesome. So I went to kind of shopping locally, and I happened to find this shag Papasan. And yeah, I was like, oh, that's perfect. So I brought it home, and unfortunately it's a little bit bigger than I anticipated. So it wasn't going to fit where the couch was, and I had to kind of come up with a solution, so I put it in that corner, but that meant our Sega Genesis arcade cabinet that Leaf and I built had to go out of this room. So I put it down in my man cave, aka the garage. So we still have the Sega Genesis arcade cabinet, it's just not up here. And that's okay. I really like the look of this up here, and that chair is so comfortable that in my mind it's a good trade-off. So yeah, that's our shag Papasan chair, and that's one of the big changes up here. And last night I was hanging out, sitting in this chair, and I was playing some Sega Genesis because this was a perfect spot right along here where the couch was to put this shelf under the window, and now I have more room for the Sega Genesis collection, which is, I love collecting for the Sega Genesis, and I needed more room because I was totally out of room. So we have all our boxed games there, and you can barely see them, but that bottom row there is all loose Genesis games. So a pretty good collection, definitely a lot of the heavy hitters like Crusader Ascenti, and we got Truxton, Moonwalker, and the Toe Jam and Earls and Earthworm Jims, and all these amazing games that I grew up with. And I was up here chilling out playing some games last night and having a blast. And speaking of blast, there's Truxton on the CRT television. And this CRT television used to be where the Papasan chair is now. I moved it over here and I hooked up the Retron 3 to it. And so we can play Genesis games, we can play NES games, we can play Super Nintendo games, and it's hooked up to the CRT television. And yeah, I love hanging out, playing no lag on the CRT televisions, which is great for these old school games because you really need that kind of quick input to get past some of these games. And then our lava lamp is warming up there. It's starting to do its thing slowly but surely. And it definitely fits the kind of retro vibe. I mean, this kind of is the retro room up here. And this is where I want, that's kind of the goal, is eventually it's just retro up here. If it's nothing this millennium, eventually will be the goal. I know we had the PlayStation stuff over there. But I'm thinking if everything is, 2000 or earlier, so 1980s, 1970s, 1990s, and that's where all that stuff, and then the more current stuff will be in the downstairs game room. That's the goal I'm kind of working towards. Over here we have the popcorn machine, and it's fun to hang out, make a little popcorn, chill out. We have our sarcophagus there, and in there are the Game Gear games. So yeah, this is kind of the best spot I could find for the Sega Game Gear games at the moment. Who knows, that may change. Another little art print, And yeah, up here we're on the second floor, and we got a nice view through these windows. So it's kind of nice to hang out and check out the backyard. We live in the forest, so it's, you know, lots of light comes through here. It's a cool spot to hang out, and I really enjoy it. This is our board game table, and we've got a whole bunch of board games underneath here, and I covered this table with felt so we can move that globe and play some board games up here. So that's always fun, and yeah, the family likes to get together and do that, and definitely one of my favorite things to do. Of course, we got our complete Sega 32X collection, possibly the highlight of this game room, for me at least, because that was a goal that Leaf and I made on the channel. We wanted to collect a complete Sega 32X set, and that took about a year of pursuing that and making videos and going on the hunt and tracking down these games, and that was really fun. And we made this little display case, and that's every North American Sega 32X game right there. So very awesome, definitely a highlight of the game room. We got this little Earthworm Jim art print at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and it lives on this wall right here. Love that thing. And of course we got our floor lamp there. And moving over here, we've got our Sega Master System, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation, or the PSP, PlayStation Portable, and our slot machine, which this thing's a trip. This is the world's loudest slot machine, and it's a lot of fun to play. And yeah, this gets used quite a bit, and I really love this thing. And it lights up and it makes all kinds of crazy noises. It's got this Japanese guy that starts screaming if you hit like a bonus, and it's a trip. So this takes tokens, which are right there in the tray. And then these drawers are all filled with board games. So I've got a whole bunch of board games. We're pretty much out of room for board games. That's another, you know, when you go on the hunt and you're at thrift stores and stuff, you see all kinds of board games you want, and they're dirt cheap, so you can bring them home and play them. And then we have another little slot machine bank right there. And then we have our PlayStation Portable collection and our PlayStation Vita collection, and the box for the iPad there. We have a poker chip set next to the oak cabinet there. And moving over here, we have a candy machine. We have our entertainment center, and the Dreamcast is currently running. We have Crazy Taxi running in the background there. We've got a Super Nintendo and an NES, and we have this little kind of DIY project that Leaf and I made. This entertainment center was originally intended for a large CRT television, and I had this 720p HD TV that I needed a spot for, so I put it here, but it left this kind of big gap. So Leaf and I took some DVD cases and we printed out the little Mario bricks and the mushroom, and we glued them together and just kind of put that on top of the TV as a little topper. So, you know, just a little fun DIY project that Leaf and I did. We have a Bluetooth speaker there, and that you can hook up, you know, your iPad or phone to that, and the TV's hooked up to it, so there's good sound. Up here we have a box Sega Genesis Core system, our box Sega 32X, a 6-button arcade stick, and yeah, I want to get a box Sega CD is probably the next one on the list of I want to put up there, and a box Sega Saturn would be great. Basically all the Sega consoles boxed, one example of each different system would be nice, and that'll be where they live. And guys, that's the upstairs game room. So yeah, we made some pretty cool changes. I hope you guys like the changes that we made. It's definitely fun watching this game room evolve over the years. It's gone through a lot of changes, and this is a really nice evolution of it, I think, especially this corner over here. I was really feeling it last night when I was hanging out up here and playing a little Sega Genesis. I actually played some Genesis, I played Biohazard Battle, and I played some NES. I played Darkman, which I picked up at Cowlitz Expo recently, and I was playing that up here, and that was tough. But of course, you know, it's an NES game, so that should be expected, I suppose. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. So just a little updated game room tour for you, a little summer update. And that's it for this video. So thanks so much for watching, and until next time, bye.